Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another debate hosted by the Warsaw Institute Foundation. Today we will discuss the topic of Europe's path forward in defense and security, which is really important in current geopolitical times that we have in our region. My pleasure to introduce my today's experts. First of all, Benjamin Bardos, good afternoon. Benjamin, I guess you're muted.
Thank you very much for that call out. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity. And it's a pleasure to be here as always.
Thank you. And today also with me, Peter Sitash, Danube Institute. Good afternoon, Peter.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining for today's discussion. Our event is organized with support of National Institute of Freedom. And my first question to you will be about Europe's reliance on US and NATO. Many European countries perceive US and NATO as full security guarantors. But looking at current situation on a globe, we have ongoing conflicts in Middle East, we have American tensions with China, so a lot is going on, and US has to look at many directions at once. So my question to you is whether Europe can fully rely on US and NATO as a full security guarantors in our region. First, I will give the floor to Benjamin.
Thank you very much for the question. And to start it off, I'm just going to go with a bold yes. And I'll base my reasoning off of that primarily on the fact that current American weapon sales to European allies are at record highs. Amongst that, mainly would be Poland with the F-35 and HIMARS systems, which have been proliferating across Europe on an unimaginable scale prior to the war and prior to 2020 as a whole. The current security setting, what we're seeing developing in Europe with an increased focus on military spending, the only way that that is sustainable and engageable is to rely on the US, but that relationship goes both ways. So the US can't just afford, or in any plausible way do so, to neglect its European allies, as that would come at an economic cost as well. But also the current security architecture that the United States maintains through its force posture is supported by our many forward operation bases, with such large ones such as Ramstein, but also smaller ones spread across out in Poland, the Baltics. This force posture of the United States is by all means impossible without our European allies. So while, yes, politics intrinsically can make and will make things more difficult, as we will later discuss the possible effects that the Trump presidency might have on this, but I think the end line and the bottom line is that regardless of any and all political maneuvering, it is just unimaginable for the United States to imagine a European security architecture where it cannot rely on its European allies and vice versa. And that was very well demonstrated during the Cold War. And I think we are seeing a resurgence of that dynamic, both globally and on the European grounds and continent. So Europe, I think, can rely on it. Politically is a different question, but when it comes to the security guarantees and assurances that were pledged by the United States, I think the biggest guarantee for the United States fulfilling that obligation is the credibility of the United States and the military assistance that it provides. As there is no NATO guarantees, there is no Western guarantee if any of those were to fail. So I think basically the credibility of the system is what's at stake here. And that's why I don't think the United States could ever afford a scenario despite any new focuses such as the Pacific, the Indo-Pacific, or any other theater, regardless of shifting focus. The United States will maintain its position and ironclad support regarding military and security positions towards Europe. And I don't think there will be any wavering or any compromises on that. The political aspect is, as always, up to debate. It's a fluent situation. but tangibly, I don't think that is set to change.
Thank you very much for your response to that. Now, Peter, can we, as Europe, rely on US and NATO as a full security guarantors? What's your view on that matter?
Partially, I agree with what Benjamin has just told. We are living as part of the Western community. There is NATO. There's a often mentioned fifth article. On the other hand, in Hungary, there is a saying that if you help yourself, God will help you. So, in my opinion, in a border situation, it can be suicidal to put your own fate to the hands of the others. And from an economic point of view, I totally agree what Benjamin has just said. So we have good economic or excellent economic relationship with the United States of America. We are buying their weapons. We are using those weapons. So the interoperability in the field of the military units, I'm not saying it works without problems, but it's there. It's fulfilling continuously. On the other hand, the NATO fifth article has never been tested. Or, okay, it has been tested once when the US was attacked on September 11th, but the US is not the country that needs the military help of the others. So we really don't know. So the fifth article, many people refer to it as an automatism. Like in chemistry, that if you mix two hydrogen molecules with oxygen, then something's going to occur out of this. But it's not working in this way. It's a possibility, and it's a strong decision of the members of the NATO that yes, we will defend you. However, it has never been tested, and we don't know that in a border situation, when it's a full-scale attack, the big countries would risk their own existence just because protecting the small countries. So it's a kind of mythical. We believe in it, that it would work in this way. However, we don't know it. So that's why I believe that we have to be protected. And yes, we have to upkeep the NATO. We have to upkeep its norms. We have to train together. We have to make our forces interoperable on the field level. But we never can just rely on that somebody is going to run to help us if we are in a problematic situation. So this is my opinion. Do you have me?
I think we lost Matvey.
Then let's go on. What do you think, Benjamin?
Well,
will Washington defend Estonia if there would be a full-scale attack on the country?
Well, I think it would definitely pass Article 4, which is necessary for Article 5. And looking at how the U.S. force projection is structured, I'd actually divide this up a little bit more. So let's say the first couple of days, there would only be quick reaction American forces, and that's where the biggest scrutiny for the smallest countries would come. Because let's take the most credible threat currently to the Baltics or smaller countries would be that they're physically small, so it doesn't take that big of a time to actually run them down, especially compared to their smaller forces. If we compare it to that of the Russians, if they were available or freed up from the current conflicts in Ukraine, because that's currently tying them down in a pretty significant manner. But where I'm going to link back to this economical relationship, how the U.S. is currently structuring it is that there needs to be a significant amount of force and force multiplying assets based in Europe where the first week, until it takes time to cross the Atlantic, because this is very much the World War II dynamic, that the US is just simply far away. So we have our airlift command and we have our ships, but it still needs time to get there. So within this first week is absolutely where I can see your argument taking the most validity, where cities like Tallinn or Riga might actually be even occupied in this theoretical grand war scenario. But I think at the end of the day, the US wouldn't have a choice in this because, of course, there's always the World War III Medvedev style, oh, we're going to nuke you and we're going to nuke you back. But engaging the conventional warfare scenario, it would be just as much a proving ground for the United States as it would be for any other opponent. So it just goes back to the fact that while the first week might be precarious in such a situation, I don't think there is another alternative that can be engaged here. And the lack of one forces us to commit to this architecture that we currently have.
Well, I agree with you. So without... Oh, sorry, Matija is back. Thank you.
My apologies, gentlemen and viewers. My connection just died for a second, but I'm back. I got disconnected when I was in the middle of follow-up question to Peter, because both of you gentlemen mentioned stability, credibility, feasibility. Now, I can see you, Peter. We spoke about stability, credibility, feasibility, and I have some kind of provocative question coming from the media rumors around US upcoming elections. So the rumors are that depending on the outcome of the American election, there is a chance that US may withdraw from NATO. So my question to you, is this really likely? How likely is that the US may withdraw? And if it happens, what should be Europe's response to that?
Well, I don't think it's going to happen. If Trump had wanted to leave NATO, he would have already done so in the past. And I think they have just in the United States passed a law which pulls out from the president's immediate hand deciding on whether staying in NATO or not. But to be honest with you, the NATO is an American-based alliance, and it also serves not just the European members, but also it serves United States of America. So if I may say, if Trump comes, I think, but even in the other hand, if the Democratic leadership remains, I think being a NATO member state will be much more expansive than it is today. So many countries, including the economically strongest, for example, Germany, had problems with fulfilling the 2% GDP obligation in the past. And now I can believe that this 2% will maybe go up to 2.5, maybe 3%, because defense, just like any other assets in the world, they do not come from free, and I'm pretty sure that Donald Trump will not sell it for free. On the other hand, leaving NATO from a United States perspective, I doesn't see the point in it. You have just commented, for example, the huge Ramstein base in Germany. So then now what? They would close it down. The American forces would leave Europe and just stay in the United States or focus more on Asia. So I think it's an unrealistic option. And also the NATO would lose its main point, because it's one thing that, and I do not want to harm anybody, so I'm just saying, for example, it's good to know that Spain, for example, would come to defend us, but it's a different story than having Spain or Portugal, or even I'm talking from Hungary. So for example, if I were Estonian and knowing that Hungarian forces or the Slovak forces are protecting me, it's one thing, it's a noble thing, but the power of the United States is a completely different league. So NATO without the United States, in my opinion, would lose its primary value, but also the United States would lose not just the military cooperation, but also lose a market for its weapons. Because if NATO is out of Europe, then maybe the American weapon industry, I'm not saying is out of Europe, but wouldn't be as much in Europe as it is nowadays.
Thank you very much, Peter. Now, Benjamin, share your thoughts on this provocative question regarding US possibly exiting the NATO and leaving the alliance.
Well, to be completely honest, I almost wholeheartedly agree here with Peter, even on the point, and especially on the point that regardless of either administration, but more pronounced under Trump, it would definitely become more expensive to be a part of NATO. And I just see that as a consequence of the current geopolitical situation that has evolved not only in Europe, but globally. But yet again, reaffirming what he said, yeah, there is a difference between Germany or France coming to your assistance or the United States coming to your assistance. I mean, at the end of the day, it is the United States who maintains the nuclear umbrella over Europe. Sure, we have other states like France and the UK who maintain a nuclear arsenal, but they do not compare to that of the United States, nor do they compare to the force projection capabilities of the United States, and on many other levels. So, yet again, I have to agree there, and especially on the latter part, for the American defense industry, it would have very dire ramifications were they to lose that privileged access that they currently maintain towards the European market. I mean, we've seen this over the last 2 years. The largest weapons purchases and acquisitions that have happened amongst European countries right now, in Poland, in Germany, in Slovakia, even in Hungary, the Baltics. You can basically go through the entirety of Europe and you will find the traces of this path towards interoperability, but it's not done through, say, Rafale, not Rafale, but Airbus defense assets, or it's not done through Swedish sold defense assets. So the most prominent fighter, for example, in Europe is not the Rafale, nor is it the Gripen. It is the F-16, and now increasingly the F-35, or in Poland with the Abrams, or when we go to missile defense assets, the Patriots. So this just reaffirms what Peter said as well. It is just unimaginable for the United States. And then if we go to the political aspect of going away from NATO, that would present such an isolationist movement in the United States, comparable only to what we had in the United States between the First and the Second World War, that it would seriously present a security risk for Europe as much as it would for the United States. Because let's not forget that by having a strong European ally, the US can afford to have geopolitical interests in Europe and in Asia. The US can redirect a large portion of its assets, its air force, its fleet, towards the Pacific, because it has the security of knowing that there are other willing allies in Europe which can also react to threats, say in the MENA region, on continental Europe. So this is just as much a luxury for the United States as it is for the European Union, Europe, and Europe as large.
Thank you very much, Benjamin, especially for bringing up the topic of aspect of the industry from American perspective. But gentlemen, let's now get back to more tangible question, more defense related. Recent statement by Polish government is that for the next budget they will increase defense spendings up to 4.7%. My question to you is whether other countries, not only from NATO eastern flank, but from Europe, should follow the same path and adapt similar spending strategies. Benjamin, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that what we're witnessing both in Europe and globally calls for an increased commitment towards our security and our way of life and our norms and values that we like and share. And unfortunately, as with the guns and butter dilemma, this comes at a price. So to have that luxury that we can live in a democratic world comes at the price that it needs to be defended both in the cyber realm, in the physical realm, in the ideological realm against any hostile actor towards that. And that comes with a price. And Poland is setting, albeit a very, how should I say, significant example in the sense that it's nearing the 5% mark. But I think it does show a good path forward and a good role model towards other European countries to what they should be pursuing. So, like if we take other large European powers, such as the Germans or the British, they have had serious problems with maintaining their military forces, whether that comes to their air forces, navies, or ground forces, both in the sense of recruitment and both in the sense of maintaining the physical assets that they have. And Poland has both by making being in the military be an actual career option. So even in a time when we're not at war, Poland, through this massive spending spree, has not only increased the amount of assets available to them, such as tanks, planes, theater defense systems, but also looking towards the servicemen and servicewomen, they have made it a more accessible and a more maintainable career option where young people would actually consider enlisting for 2, 4, 6 years. And this is, I think, something that would be very underrated, especially when we translate this towards bigger Western powers. Even the United States share this problem where many recruiting goals have not been hit. And a lot of those problems can be traced back to the fact that it's simply not an attractive career for many to join the military. So what Poland has been doing by pouring this amount of money into the military, fair enough, a large share of that now goes to procurement projects, but also by just modernizing the military, both in pay, benefits, has made Poland a very credible force and also a potent force when we put that into the context of a possible mobilization. Because yet again, there's the luxury of the fact that Poland would be able to accommodate such a large force. There wouldn't be the sudden question. It's like, oh, we mobilized, let's say, 300,000 people, and now we just need to ramp up the defense industry to be able to supply, house, pay benefits, and everything. So Poland is very well preparing for what could be. And I think that is a very powerful deterrent, and especially if we multiply it on a European scale. So overall, to just track back to the original question, I think it's great what they're doing. I think other European countries should adopt a similar strategy, albeit with a degree of evaluation to what extent that's possible in their own countries. So, for example, Slovakia maybe shouldn't be expected to close the 5% mark, or Hungary or the Baltics either, although they do have a quite significant military expenditure as well. But what I'm saying is that there should be a rationale of proportionality from what we expect from other European countries when they follow on the footsteps of what Poland is currently doing. But yet again, to sum it up, I think it's an amazing plan of action, and I do think other European countries should pursue it, in addition to the United States.
Thank you. Totally agree. Poland has made a great progress in recent months and years, not only by purchasing new equipment, but also modernizing the equipment they already had. But now I will give the floor to Peter with the same question. Should other countries follow Polish path when it comes to defense spendings?
Well, I think that Poland is in a special position, and not just in Central Europe, but in the whole Europe as well. A few years ago, I read somewhere that from an economic point of view, Poland is the China of Europe. So Poland has economy, Poland has manufacturing industry, and Poland is developing on a much higher scale than in the other Central European countries. So do not forget when there was the big financial crisis in 2008, Poland was the only country which didn't get into recession. So the economic possibilities of Poland are basically different than the economic possibilities of other Central European countries. While Benjamin was talking, I just put the World Bank data on my screen, and Poland, the GDP, the current GDP of Poland is 2.5 times more than the GDP of Czechia, and it's even 3 times more than the GDP of Hungary, and almost 4 times more than the GDP of Slovakia. So in these countries, to go into military spending on such a huge scale, I don't think that would meet with the needs of the population. So these countries, Hungary definitely, but also Slovakia, have just been able to upkeep the 2% expenditure, what was the expectation from 1997 when Hungary, Poland, and Czechia joined the NATO. This was the expectation to spend 2% of their GDP to the military, and these countries, they were just able to do so because there are so many other fields where the money is needed. What Benjamin said, I wrote it down because it's a so nice phrase, the rational proportionality, and proportionality, and I agree with that. So we have to find a balance between what is rational and what is irrational, and Hungary was the first in the region who decided to modernize the military. So remember, in the Central European region, Hungary was the first country who modernized the Air Force when bought Gripens in early 2000s, and in 2016 Hungary was the country that initiated a big military modernizing project, and we already have infrastructure for building, manufacturing, for example, Lynx tanks, and the Boeing has some infrastructure here, and also the biggest ammunition manufacturing factory is being built in the country. So on the other hand, we know that, and the Central European countries also know that and perceive that we need to do something in this field. Maybe the 4.7, it's a bit more, and I'm not even sure how long Poland will be able to upkeep it, because these post Eastern Bloc countries, we have in many fields to catch up with the West. On the other hand, I think an important question will be, and it's the question of the not of the far future, but it's an immediate question which has to be decided. Then, do we upkeep the so-called professional military system, or will we bring back the conscript system? Because, for example, Croatia has just decided to bring it back from, I think, 2027, and rumors are heard from Denmark also, then they are planning to do the same. So this will be an interesting question if we are able to take this step and push the population a little bit toward the militarization, but this step will always bring political risk, and the countries are also, or the leading political parties in I think every country are afraid to make this step, because deleting or deleting this kind of system is it's a popular thing, but telling to the 18-year-old people, then okay, from next year you will have to serve a compulsory military service, it may bring some unpopular steps. And also there is one more thing which I would like to address, that if we start buying weapons, it can lead to a race between the countries, and when one country is getting stronger and stronger, the neighboring countries will always ask that why are they doing so? Who are their enemy? Don't they want to do something against us? So the security problem will emerge, and it can lead to an armament race, and also putting huge effort into military modernization and weapons procurement. It can also have bad influence on the international relations, and it would be, I think, a great thing to avoid.
Thank you very much, Peter. That was really interesting and detailed response from you on that. And with that aspect of your response, we've came to an end of our today's debate, unless you gentlemen have something to add or a short ad vocem to one of us. But if not, Benjamin.
I might actually get back on what Peter said because I think that's really interesting. I think we've tapped into a very interesting political dynamic that's going across Europe, especially as regards conscription and the economic opportunity cost of engaging in military buildup. I wholeheartedly agree that currently a lot of European countries would simply not be able to justify, even on the premise of a physical war in Europe, they would not be able to justify it towards their domestic political audience. And especially since, politics goes after re-elections, they would simply not be able to say that, hey, we're going to pour, let's say, 5% of our economy into purchasing this, this, and this, and this, instead of, I don't know, social security, healthcare, education. These are all very prominent issues across many European countries, which is why I actually want to bring a very interesting idea here. My idea of a military buildup doesn't necessarily go along what Poland is doing right now, where they buy a bunch of military equipment with the value of millions and or billions of dollars from foreign countries, and basically the manufacturing potential of that is mainly lost. Sure, Poland has significantly invested in their manufacturing capabilities, but I think what should be the primary objective of Europe until there is peace, and hopefully that lasts, is to develop an economically sustainable model of a military buildup, whereby we concentrate on developing a manufacturing base in Europe, which would lead to a rise in engineering jobs, technical jobs, which can be accompanied with the investment of that in the education system. So, while sure, this does engage the idea of the military industrial complex, and that has its own problems, but I don't think, given the vast amount of problems that currently plague European domestic politics, that there's any other alternative way in which that can be carried out, especially with reference to the problems that Peter identified previously. So, for example, to just dig in on this a little bit shortly, it's like, say, let's engage the example of Hungary or Slovakia. They wouldn't necessarily be able to afford purchasing 12 or even 6 F-35s and afford the maintenance of that and all other accompanying costs. However, say, let's look at the mainly Soviet-style tank composition of both Hungary and the Slovakians. Fair, we did just buy new Leopards and they're getting delivered. But how about we instead look at, all right, we have Leopards. How about we start engaging the production of certain components to that and make it beneficial for Hungary to be getting Leopards? Or this can extend to small arms, helicopters, whatever you want. But to basically strategically spread out the production chain of these military equipments that we're buying both from European suppliers and from the Americans. I think this would be a great opportunity for America to popularize military buildups, is to diversify the supply chain of it, where they invest in European countries, be that Western, but mainly Eastern Europe in this case, and thereby engaging the population with an interest towards this buildup, where they say, okay, we're getting jobs, there's money coming into the economy, and therefore there's a reason for me not to say, well, there's no opportunity cost because there's money going to the government, there's money going to the people, and that therefore doesn't necessarily preclude under a reasonably composed national budget to divert the profits of this military industry into those areas where there are currently problems. Naturally, this takes time and political will, but I think that this would be an opportunity that, for example, going back to our previous topic, the next American administration should consider if they want to retain a Europe that is economically, militarily, and politically mobilizable, and not where we have a fragmented Europe that would say, well, we actually can't afford to go to war, literally, as I think that would be catastrophic.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Peter, anything to add on that matter?
Well, I totally agree with it. So it has to be the economy and the military goes hand by hand, and it has to remain in this way. So now I see it in the example of Hungary that we have made big procurements in the last decade, I can say, but also these procurements were also followed by investments from these countries to Hungary and to Hungarian production. And this is the way how it should be working, in my opinion, because the Central European countries need the injection of this technology and also this industrial turn into their economy. So it's quite important. I agree with Benjamin.
Thank you very much. Economically sustainable model of military build-up, very nice phrase by Benjamin, as a primary objective for Europe in this area. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining and being here today, sharing your views with our observers. And to our observers and followers, please follow our next online discussions, our analytical reports and articles, and more to come in the future as well. So I highly encourage everyone to follow our daily activities. Thank you very much, Benjamin. Thank you, Peter, and see you next time.
Thank you very much. It was a
Thank you.
pleasure.